application is at 625 by Vermont Avenue, LLC. It's a minor subdivision to create two lots, one on Evergreen Boulevard.
Oh, is it?
Ryan,
Sorry, John, we're rushing you. Okay, we're ready.
Chairman, something I forgot to say.
wow, good to see you.
Good to see you.
How's everything?
Very well, thank you. You just want me wrong. Mr. Chairman, John Doyle, on behalf of the applicant, we are to proceed on this two-lot minor without variances. I would suggest that we will meet all of the comments regarding compliance, and that the one item was parking, and purpose of filing will testify to that, and any other questions the board may have.
You swear to affirm testimony will give the court report from the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do. Brian Flannery, Jackson, New Jersey, licensed professional engineer, professional planner. A1 is the copy sheet, 143 is the tax map. It shows the property on the corner of Farry Street and Evergreen, which are both paper streets. At this point, it's just south of Route 70. The board may remember the applications that occurred in the area along June Street and on the easterly side of Evergreen. There's duplexes approved there. This will be compatible with the area. As indicated in the report, we're in the B5A zone. Duplexes are permitted. We're doing this not requesting or require any bulk variances. We're asking for 2 design waivers. We're asking for a design waiver not to improve the frontage along Farry Street. We're not going to use that. Farry Street comes out near the intersection with Route 70. I don't expect that would ever be done. It would be a hazardous place to do it. I don't know what the people in here, it's a B5 zone, so there may be businesses. I don't know what it is. That's the design waiver. The other design waiver
Is there anything in that on that area now?
It's trees now.
It's trees.
This whole area is trees. The other design waiver
Could you
is...
just close the door, please? It's hard to hear. Thanks.
The other design waiver for non-radial lot lines and the other items in the report, we would satisfy all the comments of RBE if the board acts favorably on the application.
Non-radial lot lines are always going to be with duplexes, correct?
But the non-radial lot lines are when you have side property lines that aren't perpendicular to the front. So it's an occurrence that you get in a lot of cases. You get them on cul-de-sac, probably have the applications we do have non-radial ones.
One question, Chairman.
Sure.
The subdivision plan is showing the two frontage roads, Farry and Evergreen, as being unapproved. Are they about to be built, in the process of being built?
They're in the process of being built by the prior application that I discussed, and we would accept that if the approval of this would be subject to the road being.
No COs will be issued with that
Correct.
paved road being replaced?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Oh.
So where's the non-radial lot lines? What's not perpendicular?
The non-radial lot line is the pink line on this map. It's not perpendicular to Evergreen Boulevard because we split it, we follow the sidewalk.
It's actually very close.
Yes.
It looks pretty close.
It looks it, but us surveyors, we know it's not.
And there's Farry Street. You said you don't want to improve that because
That Farry Street, we're not using, you can see Farry Street is on the top of 82. Our duplexes are fronting this street that's going to be improved by a developer that's,
but what happens if someone wants to get to Farry Street behind lot 624?
well, Farry's a paper street right now, so we're not changing that situation. Anybody that wants to do anything, the difficulty with Farry Street, if it was a typical, I don't think we have anymore, but paper streets in Lakewood anymore, that were done in the 1920s and are getting picked apart, like June Street is one of those. And June Street comes out to Vermont, and that's being worked on with the county to do it. This particular location where Farry Street comes out, it would be hazardous to have Farry Street come out.
So what happens if someone lots 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7? What's the name with those lots? They're not at all.
3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, they could, if they wanted Farry Street in order to do it, they could put Farry Street in. They're not gonna be able to connect Farry Street to Route 70. They would have to put a cul-de-sac on their property, they'd have to work something out.
So shouldn't the owner of lot 16 now?
My professional opinion is not, because it's not a paper street that on the face is one that is definitely gonna be built. If it was one that was definitely gonna be built, then my opinion would be have to put it in. Being in the B5A, which is a business zone, if somebody buys some of the property and does a business here, they don't need Farry Street, they would ask for it to be vacated. This applicant would be happy to have it vacated, but he's not gonna ask because that would create a problem. What he's asking is to not have to improve that, which he's not gonna use, and maybe nobody's gonna.
So you said if 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 would be improved for business only, not for...
No, they could be approved for whatever they want. What they would have to work out is how to,
Let's say they don't go out to Route 70, but they want to go out to Evergreen.
and they would have to find somebody that could dedicate some of the land on one side or the other to create a cul-de-sac, so that you could have a RSIS compliant road.
So let's say they get that, and they have a RSIS compliant cul-de-sac there.
So if the board grants
How
this
they get
waiver,
it out, that would be...
if the board grants this waiver, that just means they need to pay for the roadway to get to Evergreen, which is benefiting only them. It's not benefiting this applicant. It would only benefit somebody that's using it in the future, and that's why
Okay,
we're.
but the law is, the ordinance says that you have to improve it.
The ordinance says that you should, or ask for a design waiver if you have a good reason to ask for the design waiver. My opinion is it's a good reason. You guys, at the zoning board once I said you get the big bucks, so you make that decision. Somebody in the crowd thought that meant something different than I did. I'm a hunter. Big bucks mean that you're a good hunter. So you guys are good hunters, but you guys make
So
those decisions.
the right of way is a good reason. One is there would be pavement, which would be unused, create drainage.
Correct.
Not necessary.
Not knocking down trees and putting in pavement for roads that may never be used. And provides no benefit to this applicant.
But I mean, the agenda is on the website. It looks like some of those lots may be owned by some names I recognize and many other developers in the town. I imagine that they are at least aware of this application because they tend to follow what the board does.
You're saying because they're not here, they're fine with it?
I'm just letting you know for reference that it does seem like there may be something happening with that property, but I imagine the developers are aware of this application.
I find it a little problematic. I mean, they're gonna come back to us in 2, 3, 4 years and say, what'd you do? Why did you let them develop it without a problem?
If we get something in writing from those people that own those lots, we're gonna have no problem.
I have a question on that, Mr. Jackson. Since they're not requesting variances, we do not require notice, but there are design waivers. Should that really require notice to the neighbors?
Yes. Were they noticing?
I don't believe they were. I
On
don't think
minor
they typically
subdivision
require.
without variances, notice is not required, and the MLUL gives the township the right to require notices. Lakewood has not taken that right. I would suggest the policy is that in such minor applications, which is coincident with why we're already suggesting that we should not be required to put in pavement, township has in a sense had a policy that says you don't have to notice your neighbor. So when the people who, as has been suggested, would come in and say, why'd you let them go? The town said they didn't have to do anything more than they're doing in terms of notice.
Excuse me, I want to clarify something. You said that for a design waiver, notice is not required. That's news to me. Sometimes I'm wrong, and you are John Doyle. But I always thought a design
Sometimes
waiver.
John Doyle was wrong.
I always thought a design waiver required notice on anything like that.
in the years that I've been practicing, if you want to hear my legal design waivers on minor subdivision.
I want to hear Mr. Doyle's position.
Well, now you got two opinions from elderly gentlemen.
He hasn't given this yet.
As the more elderly, I agree with the younger man.
All right.
Not the youngest man.
But what I wanted to say with respect to somebody coming in and saying, why did you let him get away with that? You're not letting us get away with something. The only person that's going to need that road is somebody else down there. Which means more correct thing would be, why did you make this guy with a minor subdivision pay for a road that somebody else was going to use?
That's part of development. I mean, I'm on the road here. That's part of development. So
And again, we requested the waiver and something.
On the other hand, I like the idea that we're not going to trees for who knows how many years. You know.
So you got something in writing from the neighbors.
That's it over there?
This is the property in question, is in the middle of, this may show it better, it's here. And as Mr. Flannery was saying, this Farry Street would come right out here to Vermont, so I can't imagine that this would be a wise route.
The DOT would never approve it.
So any improvement of this road, like Mr. Flannery said, would need some sort of turnaround, cul-de-sac, hammerhead, whatever's compliant with RSI at the end of this section. Or, cut through here, but that would eat up this entire property. I can't imagine someone would want to cut a 50-foot right of way through here, circle back.
I would like to highlight it as much easier. Yeah, as much easier. Say it again.
Say, if you were to improve Farry Street here, I can't imagine the DOT would allow a connection out here to Vermont, so close to 70. So they would need to provide some sort of turnaround here, hammerhead, cul-de-sac, whatever RSIS standards require to come back out here. I know oftentimes for single-family development, people will go to the zoning board in rural areas like this and request relief from improving the whole roadway, and instead, let's say they were putting a house down here, just design more like a driveway. So they would go to the zoning board for relief from improving to full street standards, and they would pave just the driveway.
If I might, through the chair, and directing myself to Mr. Reynolds' question, so often I appear and hear neighbors say, well, I don't want it, and I live there. And the chairman will say, well, you live there, and you're here, but you don't have a veto. I'd be concerned about requiring of us that a particular neighbor has to approve the the subdivision. Otherwise, it should be an economic thing. In fact, if you talk about economics, the rest of Farry, if it were developed, would be a larger development than this rather modest, and the burden should fall on them, not on us.
The board, I understand, but the board doesn't do that.
Any other questions from any board members on this application? I just have one. So right now it's all wood.
Yeah.
He's not gonna, obviously, he's gonna build it now.
No, he's waiting, and he's associated with the development that's in here that comes off of Locust Street out to Evergreen and out to the gym. So
Just waiting for
nothing's
that.
being built here till that's that.
So really, if you go for the ordinance, he should have to improve the frontage on everything.
Well, he is improving his
He
frontage.
is.
So he's waiting.
No, the other one he's waiting.
Already, the other one,
We're approving one, we'll see now two.
Anyone from the public have any questions or comments on this application? Seeing no one, close it to the public. Do you want to just close? Or?
For the reasons given, I think this is a very minor, modest application. With respect to the waiver, I think the only expert testimony you've heard without objection, either from your professional or from the audience, is that the waiver is appropriate, meets the statutory standards. For the reasons we've given, that is the modest nature of the application, the unlikelihood of development that would require Farry to go out to 70 because of the DOT, the waiver ought to be granted.
You might want to look in the future of noticing neighbors on this, on these type of applications.
I'm checking that out, because if he's wrong, we won't be able to adopt this resolution, but.
My recollection is the MLU only references to variances and then subdivisions. It doesn't reference notices. It doesn't reference waivers at all.
Yeah, I'm checking.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it's before, I just have to validate. What?
Section 51 speaks to the reasons for granting a waiver. I don't know that it speaks to the notice. I think that's 10 and 12A through H. At least from our business.
And then, well, just to be clear, your argument is that there's a possibility that down the road, whoever does those 4, 5, 6 lots could come back to the zoning board and ask for not a full road.
I'm sorry, that was my suggestion. I just don't want to say that that's necessarily what we think the neighbors might do. I just know it's a possibility.
Yeah, we don't know, we don't know what or when the neighbors are gonna do anything.
My point is that that would be much more minimal expense.
Yeah.
And there's only gonna be a few houses down that road anyway, so it might work for them.
Correct.
Okay. Seeing that there's no one in the public, we'll close it. I'll entertain a motion on this application.
I'll make a motion to approve the application granting the second design waiver. We're not going to do
I'm sorry to hear the tail end of the question.
I'm making a motion to approve the application granting the second design waiver about the linear line, but not granting improving the street. I'm willing to reconsider if you get something in writing. Or we notice them. You didn't even notice them.
You follow the rules.
Yep. Same here.
Mr. Jackson, are we waiting to vote before you?
No, so far, I think they're right, but I'll address it before the resolution, because if we don't, if notice is required, we don't have authority to consider this case, so I'll take care of that when we go to adopt the resolution. So there's nothing we can do about it now, so let's approve the application, and I'll alert the board if I find something that says notice must be given for a waiver. What?
Right now, there's a, is there a second to this motion? So I think this motion died. Do we have any other motions on this application? I'll make a motion to approve this application, both with waivers, if they do not have to notice, but if they do have to notice, then obviously we will have to hear this application.